Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So, cheap guitar versus expensive guitar. Now, a lot of people think that the more you pay, the better you get. Well, sometimes it varies, but sometimes you can buy a really cheap guitar, put a little bit of TLC to it, and it can be just as good, if not better, in some cases, than a more expensive guitar. So we're going to do a little bit of testing here today, and we're actually going to use the Rise by Sawtooth, which I got about 75 bucks tied up in this thing. Okay, now it sells brand new with an amp and strap and all the goodies to get you going, okay, for like 120 some bucks on Amazon. Then of course we have the Les Paul, which I paid $1,800 for, and then I've also soaked about another 600 or so into it for upgrades. So yeah, very cheap versus expensive. And both guitars have humbuckers, and we're just going to use the bridge pickup because it keeps it fair, because this only has one pickup in the bridge and it's a humbucker. So we're going to start with metal tones. Now I'm going to leave the volume the same. As far as the equipment I'm using, camcorder for recording. Okay, so there's no processing of audio or any of that garbage going on. My GT1000 Boss pedal board is hooked into my Marshall MG100 HDFX head into a Marshall 4x12 cab. So let's just play around on some chords. I'm not making up songs here, we're just going to mess with some chords and get a general idea what it sounds like. Alright, volume control and tone are both wide open on both guitars as well for this test. And this is a little 3/4 size guitar, so this is not a full size guitar. The idea here in comparison is very cheap versus very expensive, not about size. So anyway, so that is the Rise by Sawtooth. So we'll just turn the transmitter off for a second. And I am using an X5 wireless kit as well. Not that that really makes a difference in total. We're going to use the same on both. So now the Les Paul. Now I have no idea what pickup is sitting in that guitar other than it's a cheap Chinese humbucker pickup. We've got a 57 Classic and Classic Plus in the Les Paul. Again, bridge position only. All controls are dimed and bridge position. So let's check out some clean. Now this is a tone that I created on the pedal called 50s Clean. Okay. This thing is so light. All right. Tuning on this thing. Something sounds a little off. Of course, it does have new strings on it, and they're not quite stretched in. Thought something was out. All right. So you've got clean sound, you've got dirty sound on both. Same pick, same wireless kit being used, same settings, nothing's changed, okay? Other than we had to add more volume for the clean tone over the metal tone. But as far as tuning goes though, I mean, we're not talking about tuning stability so much because these are brand new strings. They were just put on like 2 days ago and they're still stretching in. I don't do the whole pull stretch thing very much because it still takes a couple of days for new strings to sit in. And the strings on my Les Paul, they've been on there now for over a month anyway, so you know they're pretty stable now, right? It does take a few days or so for brand new strings to stabilize, so I'm not going to count the fact that I had to do a little tweak on the tuning, because generally the guitar stays in tune really well. All guitars, period, will not stay in 100% perfect tune when you put them back on the wall, you know, and when you start bending strings you start to actually fall out your tuning a bit, depending on how far you bend up those strings, depends on how fast it'll actually fall down a bit, but you know, plus or minus a little bit. We only had to do a little tiny tweak, so I'm not going to count that in this because of those reasons. But as far as tone goes, you know, they're not far off from each other for sound, you know. As far as playability goes, the action is actually a little bit lower on this one than it is on the Les Paul. We've got 5 millimeters above the humbucker on this guitar, and Les Paul is about the same. You know, they're about the same. So, you know, but then we have a cheap Chinese humbuckering pickup versus the 57s from Gibson. You know, pickups do make a huge difference in your sound and your tone, as do strings and string gauges. This is using 9s, the Les Paul is using 10s, so there's a difference there. Now, as far as let's go for cheap to expensive using the same gauge of strings, okay. I'll pull out the Chord X2, another humbucker guitar. Now, it is much more expensive than this thing is, obviously. So let's start out with clean again. Okay, you can always play back the video and listen to the sound again. So let's go back to the metal zone. I'm going to have to turn this down a bit. Alright, so back to the metal. Alright. Now the Cort, we're probably going to have to tune it first because it's been hanging on the wall for a long time. It's been collecting a little bit of dust since I got my Les Paul and started really playing the Les Paul a lot more. But this has always been my go-to axe for many years, so let's see what we got with this puppy. Alright, so we are going to check the tuning on it. Now, as far as string height goes, it's pretty close to the Les Paul. Very close to that one as well. And I'm sitting at about probably 4 millimeter on my bridge. Okay, so it's a little closer, but it doesn't really matter as far as that goes too much. I have different setups for different guitars depending on what I'm playing on them. Oh, G string. Okay, so not bad actually. The E needed a little tiny tweak in the G. Alright, so metal tone. Alright, clean tone. So you guys be the judge. Do you think they're pretty close to each other? You know, as far as, you know, being tonally good. I mean, playability. I mean, I like all my guitars. I set my own guitars up myself. You know, so this way it's done the way I like it to be. Not the way some technician wants it to be, because factory specs. Anyways, that's what we've got for you. Now, the Court was probably a little over $400 new is about what I paid for it. That was a few years back. And it's a great guitar. It really is. I can't even wear the frets down, and I play the daylights out of that guitar. Like I said, it's been my go-to guitar for years. I got the Les Paul. The first little while, the Les Paul kind of sat, touched a little bit, sat, touched a little bit. You know, it's kind of a paranoia thing at first, really, because, you know, you spend $2,000 on a guitar, and it's like, oh, do I really want to play this? Yes, I do. So I actually do play the Les Paul pretty much full time now. My Court doesn't see a lot of action anymore, but I do have to learn to spend more time with it, because it is a great guitar nonetheless. And it is not running its stock pickups. Those Zebra pickups are third party, and those are actually cost me like $12 from Banggood.com in China for the pickups sitting in the Court. Okay, I just wanted something different and maybe a little bit different sound, and they actually did the trick for me, and I really like them. They're great little pickups for the price. You know, so, you know, if you wanted to compare cheap pickups to expensive in that manner too, we do have a rather cheap humbucker pickup sitting in the Sawtooth, and relatively cheap pickups in the Court going against 57 Classics that are chick-ching, baby. Okay, yeah, they're not cheap. But even for guitars, you know, I do have the Sawtooth set up exactly how I want it, for the, you know, string height and all that jazz, and, you know, and I actually like this little thing. This thing's a lot of fun, actually, and so lightweight. I mean, you can just kind of like toss this thing around, and it's just so light. I love it. You know, and it does, to me, I think it has a really good sound. And I'm going with a cheap guitar through expensive equipment too at the same time. And, you know, even if I was to go and do this same test with something cheaper in here, like my cheapest amp I have is actually my PV Edition 20. And it's got a very vintage tone, obviously, to it, because we're talking 1983, 84, right? But even for putting up against modern equipment, which most people are going to be using today, you know, even this cheap guitar, in my opinion, it does an awesome job. It really does. I mean, the amp that comes with it in the kit is kind of, you know, but I mean, hey, you're only paying $130. I mean, you know, that's cheap. And of course, my prices, when I tell you guys, are all Canadian too. So, but I think that, you know, I mean, I love the Les Paul. I really do. It's a great guitar, best investment I've made for getting something high-end in an electric guitar. And of course, you know, there's the SG, there's my Les Paul, there's, you know, my Strat, a few other guitars. The only other cheaper guitar I have, and it's not actually a cheap guitar, is actually my Dean Zero. I only paid like $80 for this thing at a pawn shop, and to buy it in Canada, by the time you get your conversion across from Canada to US to Canada, you're looking at about close to $1,100, $1,000 Canadian, or about $700 in the US, because, you know, you got shipping charges and all that jazz. So if you want to look at another cheap guitar, this to me is a cheap guitar as far as what I paid for it, not what it's worth. It's worth far more than what I actually paid for it. And I got it on such a cheap deal because the pots were all shot, the three-way switch was shot, the jack was garbage, and that was all that was really wrong with it. I mean, it's got a finish crack, but all set necks and get finish cracks on them, so you can't really count that. But, you know, I mean, this is basically like what do you call it? A copy of a Gibson Explorer, right? and it's got the Dave Mustaine pickups in it. Great little guitar, you know. Well, not little actually, it's full size, but you know, it's a great guitar, and you know, if you want heavy metal, it can do it, you know. Let's give this one a little bit of a sound test for you, and you know. So we're on the clean, same volume settings too. Everything's full out, yeah. I think that's out a bit. It's been sitting on the wall for a couple of weeks. Let's see how close it is. Oh yeah, she's flat. So technically I paid $5 more for this than I did for that little sawtooth, but when you look at the retail end of things, this one is actually more comparable to my Les Paul as far as price. Now the Les Paul is still like, you know, over $700 more and whatnot, but still, when you look at it in that aspect, this would be my second in line. My most expensive is my Les Paul. So I'm going to have to turn the volume up a little bit. This guitar has 9s on it as well, so it's kind of a good competitor against the Chord. Okay, so there's the D. Again, a great guitar. Pickup difference is set at about 5mm. Action is, oh, it's pretty close to the Les Paul. You know, it's pretty close. But and the height of your strings does make a huge difference in sound tonally, as far as output goes, and what kind of sound you're going to get. So volume and tone. Right, but you know, still, it's a really nice guitar. I play it once in a while because it's kind of a really nice, fun guitar, and I kind of like the design on it. But otherwise, guys, cheap guitar versus expensive. The main key focus here was actually the Rise by Sawtooth against the Les Paul. So you got my opinion on it already. Derive your own. Leave your comments down below, and tell me what you thought of the Sawtooth versus the Les Paul specifically. But if you have any opinions on, you know, the Cord X2 and the Dean, feel free to throw those in as well. You know, like I said, I only paid 80 bucks for the Dean. I replaced the pots, the switch, the jack, threw a brand new set of strings on it, set the intonation and the height where I want it for the strings. Kapang! It's a great little machine, you know, and it's expensive to buy brand new, right? Because if I was looking at brand new, I'd be like, let me think, Gibson Explorer, or this, Dean. Dean would win easily because it's the same idea of the Explorer, and I kind of like the Explorer, but I don't like the price tag on the Gibson Explorer. Just really turned me off a little bit. But, you know, hey, whatever, right? So anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll definitely catch you on the next video. Bye.